Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and I wanted to make a bit of a rambly discussion video. I don't do these as often these days, but this is something that I've had in my mind for a while because there's been a high number of very specific things to me and what I do on GTA, which 95% of the time is racing, that I feel like I want to highlight, both positive and negative. And I just felt like, making a video on the obvious stuff and the stuff that's always at the forefront in my mind every time I race in this game. Now, we're all annoyed by the things that they're doing with GTA Plus, or the prices of new cars, or the removal of the cars on the websites, but I wanted to focus in this video on the lesser mentioned things that are honestly just very specific to me and what we do as a racing community on the game. And like I said, I also wanted to give both sides, so we've got the complaints as usual, but I also want to give some praise to Rockstar for some of their recent changes and additions, because it's actually been some pretty decent things. Now, this isn't trying to be an exhaustive list by any means, so feel free to put your own weird, very specific annoyances or praise down below in the comments after you've watched me give mine, I guess you could say. Or you can add, to do the same things as well. So, yeah, I mean, we'll start with the complaints because that's very easy to do. Weather instant races. I still don't understand why the weather system isn't available to change the weather in stunt races. It was when stunt races were first enabled, but even the creator for stunt races says the same as it does for land races, explaining that the options you're giving the host to select for the race for weather, but for stunt races there is no weather selection option, and there hasn't been for a long time. It just doesn't exist. Land races you can change the weather on in the race lobby before a race starts. Stunt races you can't, and it's just such a shame because it was so much fun to be able to just have a race in the rain or have a race in the snow, as you could be able to do now because they've added snow. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things and one of the longest standing things that has been annoying for us for so long. Playlists, you can't join playlists midway through. This has been a thing for a few DLC updates now. If a playlist has started, we obviously race in playlists usually, and there's more than say 20 people in the playlist, new people can't join. I don't know why, it's some weird bug, but they try to join and then they get timed out and disconnect, and that happens consistently. This isn't just a one-off thing. The reason that I'm saying these things is because these are things that we're experiencing week in, week out when we're racing in GTA, and obviously this is the vanilla GTA. I'm not talking about 5M or anything. So yeah, you can't join playlists midway through. Multiple classes that are not usable in regular races is still a shame. All those shiny new police cars that we have, and very expensive at that as well, and none of them can be used in races since emergency, service, military, commercial and industrial classes can't be selected in races. So anything that gets put into those classes just it's almost forgotten about in a way, at least from a racing community perspective. And there's also still no all option in races like there's an adversary mode that was released a long time ago, where you can select a number of different classes, so muscle, sport, classics, whatever, but then there's also a selection for all, so you can just race any car from any class, and that's been in an adversary mode, locked away in that random adversary mode for years and years and years, and it's never made its way over to normal races. It would be great to just be able to put the class to all instead of muscle, sports, whatever, and you can just select any car from any class. And the adversary mode actually makes it quite helpful in terms of when you're selecting your car, because you first select the class that you want and then you select the car as well. So yeah, just little things. It would be nice to be able to have more ability to make our own races in a way and select the classes and cars that we want to race with, rather than being restricted to sports only or muscle only or whatever. There's certain cars as well that aren't available still. You've got things like obviously the Stromberg in Sports Classics. It would be really nice to have that available with its weapons disabled, or the majority of cars in the utility class. I think there's only like 4 or 5 raceable cars in utility. There's no point in utility really even being raceable. I'd sort of there's also, random weird cars where the player owned and upgraded versions can't be used, but the stock versions can, like the Kanjo SJ and the Postlude in tuners, for example. They're made to be tuners. The stock versions can be used in races, but player owned and customized versions can't. The Jester Classic in Sports Classics is another example of that, when they didn't do a proper job of changing the class. Or the Menacer in Off-Roads can be used stock, but not for the fully upgraded version. It's probably just a consequence of, I think it's a consequence of Rockstar seeing everything through sort of a dev mode, which does allow these vehicles to be used. But yeah, for us normies, we can't use those vehicles, and there's a few weird vehicles like that in pretty much all the classes. But yeah, it would also be nice to have some vehicles that aren't raceable. Obviously, you can just look at the testing videos and see everything in the non-raceable section. It would be nice to have some of those be available. The Stromberg is probably my number one at this point from Sports Classics. Now that we got the Ardent, the Stromberg is the next one, because it would be really nice in the Sports Classics class for racers, and it's a nice car to drive, and it would fit right in with a really good tier as well. The HSW subclass can't be selected in regular races in the lobby selection. It's limited to only specific HSW only tracks, which basically get ignored. Nobody's creating a separate track just for HSW cars. And the HSW subclass itself, like tuners for example, it would be an interesting class to race with. There's quite a few interesting tiers in there, as we saw from the HSW testing video, that if we could just load up a job and go from supers to tuners and then just select HSW instead, rather than needing an entirely separate track made specifically for HSW cars, that would be so much more interesting, and we'd actually be able to use these cars and certainly race with those tiers within HSW. Following on from that, HSW being added to new cars instead of being used to breathe life into old cars is super annoying, and I've talked about that more towards the end of that recent fastest HSW cars testing video. I talk about it more at length there if you want more of my thoughts on it. But yeah, it's really such a shame that Rockstar originally created HSW and added it to older cars, and then they just forgot about that and just added it to a random selection of new cars that completely break classes and whatnot. As always, it would be nice to have some features that are currently locked in the dev version of the job creator released to the full public creator, as well as more prop types that have previously been blacklisted for no real reason. The restrictions on the creator in general is always a consistent complaint, when we know that those on PC who have access to the dev version of the creator have so many more options, so many more props are available to work with, and it's just a shame that there's so many restrictions on that in general. I think generally these all follow a trend of either fixing bugs or being more open or less arbitrarily restrictive. All of the things that I've mentioned here, different classes in races, different cars available that aren't normally available. It's generally just a case of fixing something that's broken or not being as restrictive as they choose to be, and that's where most of the complaints come from here. And obviously, like I said, this is all very specific to what we do, and these are the sort of things that annoy me a little bit every time I'm on the game and racing, just doing racing, doing playlists, things like that. These aren't the sort of complaints that you're going to hear from the majority of players, I guess. The final one, and one that's annoyed me ever since the PS5 version of the game was released with the expanded and enhanced version, is the safe zone size. We still don't have that on PS5. We're still restricted to the default safe zone size, and this isn't the PS5 setting where it determines how far out the screen is on your monitor or whatever. This is the setting that determines how far in or out of the screen the UI is on the overall screen. So yeah, on PS5 we can't change that. You could change it on PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, but you can't change it on PS5. It still don't have it. It's really annoying. But now I also wanted to give some praise as well, because Rockstar have done some pretty good things since the expanded and enhanced versions of the game. Some of these are only released on the expanded and enhanced versions as well, but it's pointless to just continually complain about things when they've actually made some changes, and they deserve some praise for doing that. And hopefully we can turn some of those complaints that I've just mentioned into praise in a video a year down the line or something, or in the next DLC. But yeah, the Ardent, usable in races now, alongside some others like the Jabba and the Night Shark. Obviously, again, like in some cases, the stock versions of those vehicles were available, like the Night Shark, I think. But yeah, now we can use the custom versions. Their weapons just get disabled, and the Ardent is the big one that we were, rallying around for a long time. I think it was 6 years or something before the Ardent was finally available in races, and it's a great car in the one of the top tiers of sports classics, and a lot of fun to race with. So we want more of that. They've done it with the Ardent and the Jabba and the Night Shark. It shows that they can do it. Now do it with the Stromberg and the Postlude and the Kanjo in tuners, and all these other random, unnecessarily restricted, non-raceable vehicles in certain classes. Just check the testing videos. That's all you gotta do. Check the testing videos for every class and see what is not raceable, and just make them raceable, fully upgraded, and if you own them. Wrenches now fix the car in pit lanes without needing Molotovs to add external fire damage. And that's something that we had a problem with, again, for almost the same length of time that the Ardent wasn't available in races. It's been sort of a continual thing with stunt races. I think it was the wrenches and the weather system not being available to change the weather in stunt races. So we got the wrenches fixed. Now we need the weather option made available again in stunt races. But great to see that fixed. That was a while ago now. The vehicle organization in the menu is awesome. Finally being able to organize vehicles in your garages without having to drive them all from one garage to another is an absolute game changer. It's such a time saver and much needed, and such a great quality of life feature to just be able to go into the menu, pick a car, and then go into the menu again and pick where you want to replace it with, or move it to. It's so easy in comparison to what you used to have to do. The same is true of the garage menu, where you can add text to describe what's in each garage. I also really like how the garages themselves in the menu have been brought together, like the office garages and the arena garages being in their own sub-menus to avoid cluttering up the list, and it was getting quite a long list before they did that. I just wish they remembered to add the description option for some of the most recent ones. They kind of forgot that. I think it's either with the office garages or the arena garages, one of them anyway, where they've collected the separate garages together in a sub menu, but you can't add a description to the main menu of that, whereas you can on previous ones from the previous DLC where they did remember to add that. So you can add descriptions to garages to say that you've got supercars in there, sports cars, whatever else, but yeah, it would be nice to be able to do that on everything, including the top menus for some of them that were added in the recent DLC. The interaction menu in general is just a lot better now. There's better sub menus and overall functionality. It's just a much better experience, I would say. In terms of races, the starting grid order setting in playlists is amazing, especially the recent addition of the previous race position option, which is you can only get that in playlists, but it's so useful to us when we're racing, and it actually works, unlike the playlist position, which doesn't work at all, and that's what they added in the previous DLC. So if you go to the starting grid order section when you're in a playlist, you can choose either playlist position or previous race position. Now the playlist position doesn't work. It's meant to put you in the order on the starting grid of either best first or worst first in the current playlist standings. That doesn't work at all. But the one that they added in the most recent DLC, which is the previous race position, that does work, and it's so helpful because that's what we do regularly in our playlists. It's always, either the top 10 is reverse order and everyone else starts in their position that they finished, or everybody just starts in the position that they finished, or being able to do a reverse grid easily is so helpful. It just puts everybody on the starting grid in the place where they should be based on the results from the previous race. It's so easy, and it actually works, and it's something that I think I talked about back in like 2014 or something. That would be something that was nice to have. So it's nice to see that finally realized, and it's so helpful. Again, just something super specific to us in the racing community doing playlists, but I'm really happy it's there. There's more props in the creator now as well. It finally feels like we're at a good number in terms of the prop count that we're allowed, with 300, with 100 fixture removals. 100 fixture removals and 300 props is something that the 2016 era of track creating could only dream of, given that we didn't even have the functionality of 100 fixture removals at all during that period. So the creator is so much better now. Again, we've still got those arbitrary restrictions that I mentioned in the complaints section, but it has just continually got better and better, and we're at a really nice place now, I think, in terms of the amount of props that we've got. You can always ask for more, but it's fine as it is now. I just wish we had less restrictions on the type of props that we can use, and using some of those dev functionality features. The new units added to the creator are a really fun addition also. They use up a lot of model memory, but yeah, being able to add some ambulances on the side of a track, or cars doing all sorts of different things, it just breathes a bit of life into tracks, and that's a really great feature. Known, unknown, and unknown races. They might have silly names, but they are a really fun addition for the most part, and it's great to see Rockstar add something like that. Obviously, they've taken the inspiration from the random races in 5M Project Homecoming, but I think that the true joy of those races is only going to be realized if those random transform checkpoints come to the creator. Otherwise, like most of the things that Rockstar do, it will quickly get forgotten about, and I think it already has, to be honest, because you only got 7 tracks. Not all of them are great. 3 of them are unknown unknowns, 4 of them are known unknowns, so you're always racing the same cars every time. It quickly becomes boring when you're doing the same thing over and over again. Really, that functionality is there, it exists in the game. It's great that Rockstar have developed that and put it into races, but they're restricting the ability to use that random transform checkpoint in the creator, and that's when it will really take into its own if that becomes available, So I think it's great that they've added them. We just again need to see some of those arbitrary restrictions removed to make it even better. Another new thing to mention that deserves to go in the praise section is the new catch-up modes, and while I still don't think they actually provide a better catch-up experience than classic catch-up, and they do have big limitations, as I covered in the catch-up deep dive video, as well as them being broken at release and only just being fixed in the last DLC, they do at least show that they're thinking about it and aiming for a better system in the next game, which is nice to see. I think it still could do with some fine-tuning, like I mentioned in that catch-up deep dive video, but yeah, it's nice that that's being thought about, and hopefully we get a better system for the next game. We just need sort of adjustable slipstream now, so we can put it to sort of 5% of its current value or whatever for regular races, then it might be usable. It's nice that the race lobby is getting cleaned up as well with the additional options section. It needs to actually work to allow non-hosts to view the options, since it currently goes to the invite players menu instead. And also in addition to that, turning off catch-up and slipstream in the creator shouldn't lock it off, but it should instead set the default values that the host can change for the race lobby. It's a nice addition that we have that we can disable catch-up and disable slipstream in the creator, but the fact that it locks it to be off so that the host of the race can't even turn it back on again if they want to is a big pain point of that. It should just be default options and let the race lobby host decide what they want to do. But it's nice that we're getting these additions, the additional options section in the creator, the ability to do this in the creator, the additional options section in the race lobby, and the ability to lock these settings in the creator, at least set the default values if that was the case. It's nice that we have these options, because that's what it's all about. We want the option to make the races and do the races that we want to do. It's also nice to see drag and drift cars get added, as we've seen for the last few DLCs. Even though I'm personally not particularly partial to those race types, the drift cars do feel pretty good, and I really like that the performance upgrades aren't needed on the drift cars. In my perfect GTA, all modifications for cars would be visual only, with no need to add performance modifications like engine, turbo, spoilers, all that kind of stuff, because the cars are just as quick as they should be. You know, in my perfect GTA, the cars are programmed to be as quick as they should be. Kind of, if you go back to GTA 4, the cars were the cars and they performed as they performed. There was no upgrades, there was no modifications. I like that. I like that being more simplistic, because even now, you add, it ends up being in the same situation. You've got these upgrades like engine, turbo, transmission. You just buy a car, you add the maximum upgrade for each, and put a spoiler on it, and you end up in the same situation that all cars perform the same anyway. So there's no point in having the upgrades. Just have the car perform as it needs to perform, and then you've got all these other modifications to the car that change visual perspectives of it. You know, your bumpers, your spoilers that can be changed for a visual perspective, not for performance. That would be my perfect thing, and it's nice to see that they've done that with the drift cars. That the drift cars that you can upgrade are exactly the same as the drift cars that you get stock in a race lobby. The upgrades that you previously had on a car have no impact on performance, and honestly, I kind of hope that that's how it is for GTA 6 as well, but we'll see what happens. And the recent cars, especially from the last DLC as well, all drive incredibly well, and hopefully that's another good sign for GTA 6, that they've finally reached a place where all cars are handling decently. Advanced handling flag experiments and all this kind of crap that we've had over the last 5-6 years are all a thing of the past, thankfully, it seems, apart from, you know, the odd one where they copy paste a previous car's handling data, like with the Entity MT and the XXR. But yeah, it seems like finally, after all these years, we're getting to some nicely handling cars, and hopefully that is realized in the next game, and we don't have we just have nice stuff to drive, basically, because that's what we want. We don't, if all the cars in GTA 6 have all the stupid advanced flags and engine flags that cause horrible driving experiences, then it's gonna be a bit difficult to get into it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the praise section. You know, I think like I say, I think it's worth showing both sides, and with something that's such a, this is a very rambly video that I just wanted to make for the sake of it, but it's all very specific to what I do and what we do as a racing community, racing in playlists, creating tracks, racing on those created tracks. It's all very specific stuff, and there's no point in going over again and again all the GTA Plus nonsense and all the things that they're doing about removed cars. You know, everybody knows that that's a bad thing, and we all hate Rockstar for doing it. These are all just very specific things that I just felt like it was worth making a video on, just because I wanted to. So yeah, like I say, I'm mainly prompted by doing this from the recent Community Verified stream, I think, where I got annoyed once more at the lack of weather instant races, and then a playlist we did after that was where I was amazed at how helpful the new starting grid order selection was based on the previous race position, and I was amazed that it actually worked as well. So that was what has prompted me to sort of write down a few things that I normally really hate when I'm racing in this game, and also that I'm really thankful that we've got now. So yeah, I wanted to give both sides, and very specific positives and negatives that I've personally experienced basically since the introduction of expanded and enhanced versions of the game. But like I said before, this isn't an exhaustive list, so let me know your weird and very specific complaints and praise for the recent changes in the comments down below. What are your things that really annoy you, or you're really happy to have seen change recently? But yeah, as of this one, that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.